All right, so this video is for chapter one of Principles of Macro. And chapter one covers of course, the five big elements of economics. So I'm not going to go over exactly what they cover in the textbook or in the PowerPoints. I'm going to give sort of my own take on this. And we're really sort of start with the fundamental economic fact in the world. And that is that we live in a world of scarcity. Scarcity means that we can't get all of the goods and services that we might possibly want. Our wants and means exceed our capacity to satisfy them. That's scarcity results because we usually need to use some kind of resources to produce the goods or services that we are going to want to consume. Now, in many cases, if you think of like cars, houses, the production is quite visible, quite easy to see. You've got to have steel and plastic and rubber for the tires and other things, and paint to make cars. You need to have lumber and cement for a foundation and nails and everything to build a house. So we can see that those goods require these easy to see factors of production. Those factors of production, the wood or the boards or the metal or the plastic, all have to be produced themselves. So resources are scarce. We don't have as many resources as we want, and virtually in really every good or service that we might possibly want is going to require the production of, require the use of at least some resources to produce. Even in limited case, if you think of like, say, natural spring water that you might buy, if you're so inclined. You think like, oh, that spring water just exists sort of out there in the world. And yes, technically it does, but like say, suppose you're interested, you like Fiji water. And let's assume it actually comes from the islands of Fiji, the water that's available in the stores here. If you like Fiji water, well, that's presumably occurring natural in the islands of Fiji. But to get it to your store, the store nearby you is going to require resources. So those resources are going to be used even when it's something that you might say we're getting out of nature in reality in some form. We're going to end up having to use some resources to get there. So we live in a world of scarcity, and economists believe that this is a fundamental fact of the world. And more importantly, it would apply to any way we might conceivably hope to organize an economy, whether you want to think of like a market economy or a socialist economy. You have government directing, government providing goods and services for people, or relying completely on private firms. There's no way to get around scarcity. If anybody's going to attempt to try to tell you otherwise, well, they're just blowing smoke. That's simply not true. That's a fundamental fact. Any economic system, any way we attempt to organize the economy, must deal with that fact. Now, scarcity, sometimes we want to say that scarcity leads us to have to make choices, but there's actually something more we need to have in here than just scarcity, and that is there's one more thing we need to have here, and that's alternatives. We have a lot of different goods and services that could be produced. We have resources that could be used to produce them. If we use resources to produce, like say, corn, then we can't use those resources to produce wheat or fruit. If we use resources to produce winter coats, then we can't use those same resources to produce swimsuits. So we have alternatives. There are many different alternatives, and in the world of scarcity and in the presence of alternatives, we're going to have to make choices. We see this every day in our economic lives. You go to the store, you go shopping online, and you have to choose what you want to do. Or even in non-economic situations, when you make a decision about whether you're going to go to class one day or not, or if you're going to study for a quiz, or study for an exam, or do something else. So with our time and our resources could be used for different alternatives, and means that we have to make a choice, and that the choice is consequential. If you could think of a world of scarcity where there were no alternatives, there wouldn't be any meaningful choice. This would be a world where maybe there's just like one economic good out there, and it's called stuff, and you like go to the store and you buy stuff, and stuff is scarce. We live in a world of scarcity, so there's only you go with some money, you can only buy a finite amount of stuff. You might not be able to buy as much quote stuff as you might possibly want. But if there's only one good to buy, you use all of your money that's available to buy as much stuff as you can, and that's what you have. By contrast, Walmart has thousands of different products, lots of different things you can buy online. And it's in that situation that you have to make a choice about what particular goods you're going to buy. And you could make a mistake. You could buy something that wasn't going to make you as happy as if you bought something else. So the choice becomes consequential. If we lived in a world with alternatives, but there was no scarcity, then you could really literally have everything. You could have something, you could do every option. And if you could do every option, then there'd be no need to choose choose one option over another. You could do them both. You could do them all. So it's the fact that we live in a world where we have a scarcity and there are alternatives that we have to make consequential choices. And economics is really about this, because when you think about one of the 5 principles that our textbook lays out is the idea of trade-offs and opportunity costs. These are 2 things that come out of this framework that scarcity and alternatives. It comes directly out of this, because if you want to think about it, opportunity cost. Economists will define opportunity cost as the value of the next best alternative foregone. We'll come back to this idea in chapter 2 as well, but this opportunity cost is one of the things here. It's the value of the next best alternative foregone. And that's important because in a world of scarcity, you can't get everything. And so when you choose to get item A, you're choosing not to get item B. When you choose to go to class, you're choosing not to watch TV or play video games while you're in class. We make choices in life, and when we make one choice, we give up something else. And then you think about what you really gave up, and this is where opportunity cost gets into it. You're giving up that next best alternative. The next best alternative that you would have done. What would you have done with those resources, or with that money, or with that time, had you not chosen what you chose? So opportunity cost comes out of this. And then we also see that we have to have trade-offs. That trade-offs have to be very fundamental. That when you, and this comes out of the idea of opportunity cost, because then if you want to think about when you start thinking in opportunity cost terms, you usually you can recognize that when you choose to do something, choose to do one thing, you're trading off something else. You're giving up the opportunity of getting something else. So life is going to end up being about trade-offs. No economic system can get around that. When we choose to use our resources or choose to use our lives in one fashion, we can't do something else. And so we have to always think of these trade-offs. Now, one thing people, especially politicians, might try to say, they might try to obscure the trade-offs. But the trade-offs have to be there. And a part of economics is to help to make sure that we can see or visualize or conceptualize those trade-offs. Because one of the biggest problems with in economics is that given that we're making trade-offs, and given that you choose to go down one path, you also don't go down the other path. So if you think of the world in opportunity costs are in one sense real and recognized, but you also don't actually you don't actually go down that other path. You don't actually see exactly, you don't experience what you would have experienced had you made a different choice. If you chose to never come to Troy University, you don't know what your life would have been like had you chose to go to another university or not go to college at all. and you don't get to live that life. You have to imagine what these things would be like. And so when we think about trade-offs, because we can sometimes see what the path that we chose. If we choose to buy coconuts and pineapples when we're at the store, then we're choosing not to buy strawberries and celery and other things. Now, in the context of choices you make at a store, that's fairly easy to imagine because you can see the other things out there. Maybe you've had strawberries before, and so when you buy pineapple instead of strawberries, you know sort of what you're giving up. But in other cases, since we don't actually experience or live the path that we could have gone down, what we really have to do is imagine. We have to imagine, we have to visualize what we're giving up. Because it's only through this act of imagination or visualization in our head can we really be clear what it is we're giving up. The economist Bastiat is famous for saying that economics is about helping people see the unseen. It's the things that we don't actually see that we're giving up that's so important. So this is my take on sort of the fundamentals of economics, scarcity and choice. It's an irreducible element of our world, and it's something that any economic system has to deal with.